One town, two teams, one show. Talking New York City hoops. From the SNY studios in Midtown Manhattan, it's the Mecca of podcasts. Here's your host, Tommy D.
Good afternoon, everybody. Tommy D here. Podcast number 2. This is the Mecca of podcasts. I'm not trying to be pretentious here, but with that name.
That was a great comment, by the way.
Oh, yeah. No, sweet Lou. We love Lou. Has been commenting for a long time. Maybe we'll have him on the podcast at some point. But that voice you heard was here last week, is here again. Does a great job as always. Mr. Dalen Cuff, MSG Varsity, Columbia Radio, homecoming this weekend. How do you feel?
I feel great. Would like the Lions to get a win, but, I'd like to be a millionaire, too. You don't get all the things you want, so we'll see what happens.
I'm surrounded by Ivy League talent as well. Another Lion in the house, and a Lion on the the Brooklyn Nets media beat. That is Mr. Moke Hamilton. How are you, sir?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Speaking of the CU Lions, homecoming tomorrow. So that being Saturday, obviously looking forward to that. Hopefully the rain turns off though, but I guess we'll have to see how that develops.
It is pouring right now, by the way.
And I don't mean to be this guy, but I guess I am, so I'll admit it. I'm wearing an overcoat today, and I have a golf umbrella. So I'm pissing all sorts of people off.
And let's be honest, you're not that tall, so you're the guy that's going to run into your umbrella into my shoulder, and I get furious at that. So this is all good.
You know what I do is I raise it up as high as I can, so I go over.
Oh, I appreciate that, because most people don't. They're not walking right into people, and I lose it.
No, I am aware of other people, and I'm self-accountable, which I'm always proud of. So let's talk about a little basketball. The other day, ESPN's basketball NBA preview came out. Carmelo Anthony on the cover. Mm-hmm. Let's get into it, Dalen. First, we talked about it right before we went on the air. Is the Atlantic Division the most competitive division in the league?
I think so. I think hands down, when you take a step back, all the teams in the division improved themselves. I think the Celtics lose Ray Allen, but I think overall they got better. Green will be back. Avery Bradley will be healthy. I think they became a better team.
Just brought in Barboza.
Thank you.
See what he's got left.
And exactly. See what he's got left. But the Sixers got better. I'm not going to run into it. Sixers got better. The Nets got better. Everybody, even the Raptors, I think did get better. I think they've got some good fits now. It should be interesting to put a couple pieces around Bargnani. So, I think they all got better. The one thing I would comment on, at least as it relates to the ESPN magazine, the cover. Did Melo look like Play-Doh, or was it me? I was like, what was that?
A lot of Photoshop.
Holy.
More Photoshop than in the swimsuit issue.
Oh, man, some serious airbrushing. But anyway, I digress.
And Brian and Moke, we've talked with Brian Geltzeiler this as well. Brian thinks all 5 teams from the Atlantic are going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I was right about to say that. I don't agree with Brian, but the thing about the conference as a whole, I think the conference has gotten so much better. Obviously the Bulls and the Hawks and the Magic are taking a step back. But when I look at the young teams, like one team that I like, John Wall right now, he's not healthy. But Jannero Pargo, they signed to kind of hold on until he gets back.
Yeah, I like Pargo a lot.
I like what Washington has done. They have Trevor Ariza there. I think Jordan Crawford is going to have a strong season. Bradley Beal, the rookie, he's pretty good.
He's very good.
They have Emeka Okafor up front. I kind of like what they have.
Chris Singleton
as well. And you look at the Cavaliers. I love Kyrie Irving.
Mm-hmm.
I love Kyrie Irving. So I look at the conference as a whole. I think they got stronger. I don't know that the Raptors are going to make the playoffs, but I do think that you could have the same situation that you had in the Southwest Division. I think that was in maybe 2009, 2010, when the Hornets won 49 games and were the 4th place team in their division.
Sure.
So I think something like that could happen in the Atlantic this year, and I definitely think 4 teams are going for sure.
I'll have a stronger grasp. I think we all will after watching the Knicks Raptors tonight. Mm-hmm. The team that I really want to focus on is the Sixers. Yeah. Certainly a team that's got a lot of dynamics. They always seem to have some sort of issues, whether it be, doesn't matter who's coaching really. There's always some drama going on in Philly. They made the move for Bynum. I think with him being healthy, this is always my thing with the Sixers. Is he going to play more than 65 times this year in the regular season? Yeah. If he does, let's say, for example, he plays 65 games. What's their record? Are they 35-30? And if they're 35-30 or 40, and do the math, 40 and 25, then those other games are where they're going to have to be able to step up and win games and play above 500. That's a formula that I'm just kind of throwing out there as pure speculation, but I'm thinking, how many games does Bynum play, and then you go from there?
Well, this is my thing with Bynum before. Can he play like a man in those 65 games if he plays? That's my issue. Just being very honest. The guy is He's just up and down, temperamental. Some days brings it, some days doesn't. So I would say he's going to get in. 65 does sound about right. If he could play 70 games, I feel like that's a big step for him to play 70 games. And if he plays like he should be able to play in 58 of them, then they've probably won, to be very honest.
I mean, where are they ranking the division? If he plays 70 games, are they the odds-on fit? No, I mean, the Celtics, you'd have to
I think the Celtics are going to win the division.
You do think so?
I do think
Okay.
the Celtics are winning the
I
division.
agree with that.
I think the Knicks are going to win the division.
I think the Knicks and Sixers are in a bad.
I mean, I think they're going to win the division.
I really do
think they've gone all in.
The Celtics are going to win the division. I actually think they could play it like they did last year a little bit and kind of slow play the older guys, and maybe they don't really care about the regular season much and get in. So maybe they go that route and somebody else like the Knicks or the Sixers win. But in my mind, if the Celtics play their guys, it's Celtics, Knicks and Sixers are battling for the second place.
I say the Celtics win the division even if they're not 100% healthy, mainly because Avery Bradley, Jeff Green, Jared Sullinger, these three guys can play, and you can expect that Terry, Garnett, and Paul Pierce, they all might have nicks and knacks over the course of the season. But I think Jeff Green, he's just so versatile. At 6'8", he's a perimeter guy, but he can kind of bang a little bit. Might not be a great rebounder, but defensively, you're not giving up anything.
But here's my thing about Green is, can you play Green, Pierce, and Garnett?
No, see, that was the point that I was going to make. I was going to say that I think if Pierce rolls an ankle and he has to miss 3 or 4 games, I think you can put Green in there as the starter, and defensively you're not giving up that much. And if you still have Rondo out there, Rondo is probably the most important part of that team at this point.
It's funny, you were going through guys, but the one guy you left out was Rondo, who is the most important guy. But that shows that there are very good pieces around that team, and regardless of Ray Allen leaving. They got better in the offseason, I think, hands down.
And I think overall, Jason Terry, for that offense, I think he's actually going to be better for that offense than Ray Allen.
Take some pressure off of Pierce a little bit, a guy that he doesn't create very well, but he can still put the ball down and make a shot fake and make a jumper.
Knicks fans want to be excited about when Iman Shumpert comes back, but people are forgetting that Avery Bradley will come back, a guy who I really, really like. A very, very good defender, maybe not as good a defender as Shumpert, but very, very good defender, and a guy who can make knockdown shots. That's when you have Terry and you have Avery Bradley and you've got guys who can support Rondo's lack of shot making, and even if Barboza can make a couple, to me that's the Knicks' problem. And is it going to be, is it Ronnie Brewer, who's a notoriously under average shooter, less than average shooter from behind the arc? Is it Kidd? Yeah, I think Kidd can definitely help, but who's that next guy that they can surround Carmelo or Amari with that the Celtics can bring to the table? The Celtics addressed every single need that they had this year. It's still going to be it's going to be up to Brandon Bass to fill the Perkins role, and can Sullinger be a really good impact rookie? But as it relates to the Knicks, they have to be able to surround their players with guys who can knock down jumpers.
I think the Celtics got better, stronger, more athletic. I think when you look at their team top to bottom. The thing with the Knicks, that is the biggest issue. It's the simplest thing in basketball. You got to put the ball in the hoop.
And pass to the rim.
Yeah, and we don't have a ton of guys that can do it on a consistent basis, whether open, more so just open, just knock down open shots. Obviously, we know about Novak. Prigione's gonna be a good shooter at times if you can get some stuff from him. But it's not a long list. And I think the concern with me for the Knicks is it is health when you think about it. Because right now you got J.R. Smith is banged up a little bit. Camby obviously is a concern. The age for a lot of these guys is a concern. Amari and Melo, think about all the time they missed last year. So if they get hit with that injury bug again, it's tough because Shumpert's not coming back for a while. So you got a lot of key pieces, and particularly your younger guys, are hurt right now.
Right.
100%. I definitely agree with that. I will say, though, I think that the Knicks should be, if things break right for them, the thing about the Celtics is they might kind of be focused on the long-term picture. And they might not necessarily play to win 55 or 58 games over the course of the regular season.
Which is tough to say, though, when you think about they've got Garnett, and he really is the centerpiece of what they do offensively and defensively. If Garnett doesn't make shots, they struggle. And if he doesn't defend the paint and bring that snarl, then they don't win. Then they win 45 or 50 games. Right. Garnett's got to play at a very high level this year.
Right. So what I'll say is, depending on how they manage the minutes in the rotation, and just depending on the way they play the regular season, if they're not trying to win the division, if they're not trying to win 55 or 60 games, then I do think the Knicks would be the second best team in the Atlantic, and I do think that they'd have a chance to kind of sneak in there. I think they're better than the Nets. I definitely would say that. And I think that the Nets are better than the Sixers. So if we're talking about ranking teams in the Atlantic, I would have the Celtics as 1, the Knicks as 2, the Nets is 3, the Sixers is 4, and I'd have the Raptors being the fifth place team in the division.
Really? That's a little surprise to me. I mean, I know you write the Nets blog now, so maybe that's why you put them third, and Tommy's got the next one. But as the objective guy here that doesn't have a blog on either one of these teams, I'm going to say that I think it's going to end up being the Celts. I hate to do it. I feel the Sixers. I think it's Celts, Sixers, Knicks, Nets, Raptors. And the thing I like the Nets. I said this last week. I like the pieces they put in there from 1 to 6, really. Once you hit Brooks at 6, 7 down, I think it gets a little bit dicier, and that becomes a little bit of a problem when it's middle of February at game 50. Who's healthy? Who's not? How high level can all these guys play at? So I think it'll be interesting. But at the same thing, the Sixers, like I said, everybody got better. But all those teams got better by bringing people in. So they still got to gel. So there are a lot of question marks. Like the Sixers, how do they all come together? How are they going to play in the same vein? Will Bynum show up? It'll be fun to watch because I do think night in and night out in that division, even with the Raptors, it's not easy. There's no more. You're not just cakewalking through that division.
Sure.
It's tough.
I think the Knicks. This is why I really like what they've done, shooting aside. And I still think you mentioned Prigioni, Novak. I mean, they're gonna make shots. You saw what they did in Washington.
Well, J.R. Smith when he's healthy, obviously makes shots.
And J.R. looks to be somebody who's trying to have a complete game, just like Melo. They're gonna beat good teams. They're gonna at home. They're gonna beat teams that they used to not beat on the regular basis at home. They can win 30 home games. They can beat Philly at home. They match up well. They can beat Boston at home. They can beat the Nets at home. I feel like they can treat home court like they used to back in the 90s. You come in there, this is our house, we're going to defend it. Then they have to win 20, 22, 23 road games, which is where leadership comes in and guys staying focused and curfews and accountability. Mm-hmm. So if they can put all that together, you're looking at a team that could win between 50 and 55 games. If they don't, it's a team that's going to be a 45-win team maximum, and it's going to be a one-and-done team. So those 10 games that they have to win because they've brought in the veterans and because Carmelo is playing at such a high level, I believe they do win. And I'm really interested to see how they play tonight against Toronto, specifically Amari in the post. Do you think Amari can be a guy who can be a 15-foot jump shooter, pick-and-roll player, and a complete post player? Or even a guy with 1 or 2 moves with a couple counters?
Hold on, let me go back to one thing you said, though, about playing at home, though, because I think they still need leadership to win games at home. Because when you look at last year, losses to Bobcats, to Raptors, the bottom of the bottom, the Nets beat them at home. Like, there were a lot of teams they should have beat that didn't beat, and a lot of the key leaders are still there. So you need to still have that mentality that, yes, we're going to protect home court, which I don't think they exactly had last year. They had a whole bunch of other issues, health and coaching and players, all that stuff was a big problem. So, but they just need to have that mentality, and I'm not sure they have it yet, but that's an important key to it. With Amari, I think that's the thing with a guy that, and I played against Amari since we were 14. Like, the guy was 6'8", and could hardly walk and chew gum at the same time. But you really didn't go in the paint because that dude was sending everybody's shot. But he wasn't coordinated. But you watched him develop as a player. And when he left Cypress Creek in Florida, he went to 1 year high school, left Cypress Creek. His team wasn't very good, but he was just dunking on everybody. He eventually developed a jump shot. So I was like, okay, this guy's not going to be able to play in the league. All he does is dunk. He did that on everybody for the first 3 or 4 years, but then he learned how to shoot a jump shot. So, okay, he's really developed his game. He's become more of that kind of player. The thing with the back to the basket player, it's such a different animal. It's so much about footwork, about patience, about understanding where your balance, your body position versus your defender's body position versus where the help's coming. That's a lot to just kind of learn. So for Amari's standpoint, it really should be you learn one go-to move and one counter, and that's got to be it. And then he's got to master those two things, so at least he can be a threat, and that'll help his game and help his longevity as a player.
I'll ask both of you. I mean, on Amari, I know his hands are bad. He's a bounce pass catch dunker, no question about it. And I think he's got a good rotation and form and release on his jump shot. I think he'll be more consistent. I think people underrate his footwork. I think his quickness will make him a matchup nightmare. Chris Humphries can't guard him on the block one-on-one. Brandon Bass can't guard it. KG can't guard him one-on-one. We've seen that. So I think
when he faces up.
And that's what I'm saying. So his first move would just be face up, don't dribble, turn, face up, and just beat your guy quickly up the dribble if you have separation, and then counter off that. Drop step, spin, whatever. I saw a lot of great post stuff from him. Game 1 in Boston. I always talk about that game. It's 2 years ago, but your thoughts on Amari and his potential to be a really solid post player?
Well, I mean, I kind of take the wait and see approach on that, mainly because Amari Stoudemire is going to be 30 years old in less than a month. And he's been playing in the league since he was about 18 years old, I guess. So you're talking about a guy that's been in the league for 10 years.
A lot of mileage.
For the most part.
A lot of mileage.
Once a guy has been in the league for 8 years, 10 years, he is who he is. You know, a leopard doesn't normally change his spots after he's been in the league for
Karl Malone did.
Well, normally.
Great ones do.
Well, I would even say Kobe Bryant and Paul Pierce did.
Exactly.
Well,
Took it out of my mouth.
you know?
There you go.
But the point is, for Amari, for me, it's kind of wait and see, because I'm not going to bet on someone being able to do that. It could happen, but I'm not going to bet on it. Now, the other thing, as far as the post-play concerns, for me, for Stoudemire, the thing about him is, if I don't think he's a great passer. And I don't think that when he has the ball in his hands, he makes great decisions with it. I don't think he's great at trying to dribble around his defender. We saw a lot of turnovers result from that.
Yeah, when he dribbles, he gets in trouble.
If you're playing with your back to the basket, now you're kind of giving the defense a better opportunity to sneak up behind you with either a double team, or one of the guards can come by and try to whack the ball out of your hand. So for me, the back to the basket, I'd be concerned about the turnovers for Stoudemire.
And lastly, before we bring Brian in to talk about the rumor mill, we know what great post play is. I mean, we saw it from Shaquille O'Neal, we saw it from Ewing, we saw it from any great center, Hakeem. It's getting position on the break, in transition first and foremost. Or if you're in a half-court set, it's somebody sending cross screen for you and just finding the spot where you're too deep for the defense to guard you.
Yeah, that's where it starts, and that's where I think it's a matter of understanding body position strength, where your defender is, and understanding that on your body and his body as well. So it is a feel thing, and I don't think people would really, they're not going to double him by reputation, I think. So I think at first he'll have a lot of one-on-ones if he's going to get to the ball that's back to the basket. That's why I was saying before, I think it is a matter of, it's got to be one go-to and a counter, because that's where you get comfortable. Once you start dawdling with the ball and leaning on guys, Malone did that because that's how Malone played.
Right.
Hakeem did that because that's how Hakeem set you up, and then he worked his footwork around you. That's not going to be Amari's game. It's going to be a matter of, let me catch, let me see where my guy is, where am I? Quick move, quick move.
Real quick, Larry Johnson, one of my all-time favorite Knicks, did not have the explosiveness once he became a Knick. But Larry Johnson's footwork in the paint and the fact that he could shoot turnarounds from either side, left or right, made him nearly unstoppable to guard in the post. Let's see if Amari can do that.
That UNLV team was very good. Anderson Hunt, who we were talking about before, Moses Scurry, a guy who helps us and actually knows a little thing or two about those teams, those great running Rebel teams, because he knows a lot about everything about basketball. We'll bring him in to talk about some rumors on our segment we call the Rumor Mill. He's the hoops critic, Brian Geltzeiler. B. Geltz, how you doing, bro?
It's all good, guys. How we doing today?
Everybody's well. I can speak for myself. I'm doing okay.
I'm doing well too, man.
All right, good. I'm glad.
You know, and it's good when we talk about our own health. It's important that we go around the league as we get into the season, and there's certainly some storylines with some major names battling some injuries, and I want to get your take on what you're hearing about guys. Let's start with Andrew Bogut going out in Golden State. Sounds like there's some issues out there.
Well, where it was a situation that he was going to be healthy, a full off-season to rest, his ankle is barking a little bit and is not really that good. It looks like he's not going to play in the preseason. Now, the Warriors have a unique situation where they're going to have 8 days off between their last preseason game and their first regular season game. So they're trying to spin it as if he's going to start the season. I'm hearing that's in jeopardy. He may not be starting the season healthy for Golden State. And Golden State's one of these teams, guys, they've pushed all their chips to the middle of the table. They're a high payroll team at this stage. I don't really think that roster's a playoff roster. They think it's a playoff roster, but they don't have anybody that can guard anybody but Bogut. Without Bogut on the court, it's an absolute disaster for the Warriors. That's a situation that bears watching.
Golden State out to a 4-1 hot start here in the preseason. I think they could be a surprise out there. It seems like they've got about 20 guys on the roster who can play, but to your point, not many of them can defend the paint. You know how much we love David Lee around here as a person and as a player. But that's certainly not his strength in his game. An unfortunate issue out in Minnesota, Kevin Love broke his hand.
Yeah, Kevin Love is going to be out for a full 6 weeks here doing knuckle push-ups in his condo. He broke his hand, and this kills Minnesota. The West is very competitive, guys, and that 8th spot in the West is going to have a lot of teams knocking on the door between Minnesota, Utah. I'm in the minority here, but I'm quite fond of Phoenix's roster. Portland could hang around for that spot. And Minnesota is going to be out going to be without Ricky Rubio, possibly till January. They could probably survive without Ricky Rubio between Luke Ridnour and J.J. Barea. They obviously not as good as Rubio, but they can hold that spot down with everything else they have in this roster. Without Love, it becomes a lot more difficult. And if they jump out of the box for, let's say, the first 20 that are without Love, and they go 6-14, it's going to be a really tough hole to dig out of once you get him back. They can hang in 8-12, 9-11. Well, maybe they can make a run once he comes back. But this really hurts Minnesota. They've built this team now with the addition of Brandon Roy and Andrei Kirilenko. This is a team that has been built to win now. And I don't mean win a title, but get in the playoffs and show their fans some incremental progress. If they don't have Love for a long period of time, don't get Rubio back till January, it's probably lottery city again, guys.
Dalen and Moke are doing knuckle push. They're having a knuckle push-up contest as we speak. Dalen just got up.
Moke's killing me right now. I just honestly just feel bad for the guy because like he's been there doing as much as he can with nothing, and they actually put some pieces around him now where they could. All he wants to do is get in the playoffs. Brian already said it. They may not contend for a title, but just get to the dance and try to see what you can do.
The only guy on the Olympic team who didn't make one playoff appearance.
And it was glaring. I mean, it was just it's blatantly obvious to anybody that watches the game. It's like this guy has had nobody around him, and you look at all those great players that have had success in the playoffs. He couldn't even get there. Now he had a chance, and they'll be behind the 8 ball if he's out for those 6 weeks.
It's definitely going to be tough, Dalen. Here's the thing about Love, okay? And I argue with a lot of people about this. Yes, they haven't made the playoffs at all. Has he had much around him? He hasn't had much around him. But by the same token, 2 years ago they only won 16 games. Is he part of the problem or part of the solution? 2 years ago he was an awful defensive player. Mm-hmm. He's upgraded his defense from awful to just bad. It's gotten a little bit better, and I think for this season it will get a little bit better. But I also think karma can be a nasty lady sometimes. And Kevin Love's at the Olympics running his mouth about David Kahn not surrounding him with enough talent. And you know what? Till your team can get to the playoffs, because you look at the guys that have done that to general managers in the past, LeBron and Dwight Howard and Carmelo Anthony, all of them had playoff resumes. This is a guy without a playoff resume who wants to call his general manager out. I think he's a little premature in doing that and needs to do more in the league. So I look at that. I understand why you would feel bad for him, but I'm not throwing so much sympathy his way.
I hear you.
Hey, Brian. So here's my question on Kevin Love: can he or can he not guard a crosswalk? Because last week, I don't remember who exactly we were talking about last week, but somebody couldn't even guard a crosswalk. So I want to know if you think Kevin Love
it was Steve Novak that couldn't guard a crosswalk. And let's just say if Kevin Love is guarding my crosswalk, Moke, I'm looking both ways before I cross.
Now let me just add something here on the Timberwolves. I think. I'm not really, obviously Kevin Love, MVP caliber season last season, some people think that anyway. My thing with them is I kind of want to see what happens with Brandon Roy and Andrei Kirilenko now, because these are two guys that were kind of brought in as veterans to help support Kevin Love and Ricky Rubio when he does come back. But now that we know that both of those guys are going to be out for a while, we got to see how the minutes go. We have to see what the expectations on them are. And also Derek Williams. There's going to definitely be a
great opportunity for Williams
to step up and kind of prove his worth and prove that he was deserving of being selected so highly.
I like Williams. I mean, to me, he was always the guy who was the prototypical that you couldn't build a more perfect stretch 4 player. Mm-hmm. He's got good size. He's got great shooting ability. He's just not a small forward.
So that's what I'm looking for.
Interesting to see.
You guys bring up a great point, because the thing is this: there are a couple. Kirilenko can play some small ball 4. Derek Williams, I agree, Tommy. His best position is in that small ball 4 spot.
Perfect.
And now he gets a chance to show what he can do. And if Derek Williams can step up and show you that this is what he can do, maybe the Timberwolves do reach that 9-11, 10-10, and they've held the ship up well enough to get Love back and then be able to make the push towards the playoffs.
And maybe sell high on him. I know some people in and around Timberwolves camp. Phil Jones, who's a rookie free agent, was let go right before Kevin Love got hurt. They don't seem to be reaching back out to Jones, who had a good camp, 6'11", good skills, good jump shot. So we'll see what David Kahn does to help up front. Now, Brian, as we get to a story that I can't wait to just bludgeon with holes. We wake up today I've got to listen to Brian Windhorst talk about LeBron James possibly going to LA. I mean, is ESPN? Let me have the floor when you're done trashing this.
Let me say this, okay? Season starts in what, guys? Today's the 19th of October, so the season starts in 12 days. Okay, season starting in 12 days. We're talking about other stories. Dwight Howard's about to play his first preseason game. You know, Celtics back from overseas, bludgeoned the Nets last night. There's stuff to talk about. The free agency situation in 2014 shouldn't really be all that high on the docket. Yes, will the Lakers have a ton of cap space? Absolutely. Is LeBron eligible to opt out? Absolutely. Do the Lakers want LeBron James? Of course they do. Find me a team in the league that doesn't want LeBron James. This is all just a bunch of hot air and nonsense. When the time comes, we'll all worry about it. We'll see what shakes out. But there's so much that has to happen between now and then. This is just such needless speculation over really something that completely distracts from what we all love, which is what's happening on the court and is about to happen on the court. It's just nonsense and garbage, and I'm really at a very limited level of patience for it, fellas.
And we knocked him for it, but you know he's got to be sitting down there with his championship ring and you know the trophy, and got his feet up here during preseason and looking at Alex Rodriguez and saying, God, I'm happy I didn't go to New York.
That's possible, but I mean, I think that's why he didn't come here. A-Rod is the poster.
The lightning
why
rod.
He didn't come here, because I don't think LeBron. We saw it in that first year in Miami. He doesn't handle that type of criticism and that type of negativity getting thrown your way well. He just doesn't wear it well, doesn't deal with well, doesn't play well. So, yeah, this whole thing is a debacle, and I think it's funny just because that's just ESPN. Like, I mean, it's certain stars, and LeBron's the star of stars. So if you got something to talk about him with 3 years out in the middle of the preseason, they'd rather talk about that than really substantive conversation about the team.
When you go to work for ESPN, both of you, when you guys both go to move on to ESPN, can you please shift the momentum? And Brian, throw you in there as well. Can you please shift things back to normalcy for me?
I wish we could, but that thing's a behemoth. That's what I'm saying.
Like
the college sports
trying to
world.
turn as my good friend Yves Darbouze would say, trying to turn a super tanker around on a dime is not possible.
Now,
Well, that's it. You get LeBron in a story, and you get the Lakers in a story. And ESPN had an opportunity to marry the two of them, and then take a guy who, let's be honest, is a very credible writer, Brian Windhorst, and does an excellent job for the most part in terms of some of the things he writes about. I feel like he's a must-read. With that said, this particular piece was not a must-read piece. This was a piece of fluff, sensationalism, and propaganda.
Now, Tommy and Brian, before we let Tommy out of the straitjacket here to let him totally destroy this whole story, what I will say is this. The Lakers are the Yankees of basketball, all right?
Correct.
And hoarding cap space and sitting around and praying for a free agent to come and join them, that is un-Laker-like. I don't see Jerry Buss doing that. I don't see Mitch Kupchak doing that. And now that Jim Buss has taken over in LA, it will be interesting to see if that's the course that the Lakers pursue. But me personally, I think that organization is too proud. I think that fan base is too proud for them to hoard cap space 2 years in advance for the hope of being able to attract LeBron James. I just can't see
Moke,
that.
here's the one thing I'll say to you about that, okay? If you look at their cap situation for that summer, Kobe's off the books. And we're hearing from Kobe he's not going to be back at that point. He's going to be finished. Pau Gasol and his $19 million a year is going to be off the books. Ron Artest and his $6.5 million a year are going to be off the books. So the Lakers have in the past, with Shaq and in certain spots, done some free agent chasing. It wouldn't shock me if they're going to save that cap space, let this group run it the way they're going to run it, and that's a wealth of cap space. I mean, keep something in mind, guys. Those three players together, Kobe, Pau Gasol, and Ron Artest, that's the payroll of the Sacramento Kings. Okay, that's about $57 million. So the Lakers will have that cap space when it opens up without even having to break down and chase. So and what they're going to look to do is have Dwight Howard try to invite somebody to come and play with him and be the guy that attracts. Saying it's going to be LeBron is frankly the height of irresponsible.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand, Brian. I'm aware of the cap situation. My point was with the Lakers, between now and then, they're going to have to make the conscious decision that the Knicks made when they were chasing LeBron to not re-sign guys that are their free agents, or to not go out there and add a guy via the mid-level exception that might be able to help put them over the top. And as far as Steve Nash and Kobe Bryant are concerned, Kobe says that now, but I mean, this guy's a competitor. If he gets one ring with Dwight, who's to say that he's not going to want to come back even on, an $8 million salary? If you're Jim Buss, you're going to tell him no because we're going to try to chase LeBron. I just don't know that the Lakers would actually do that.
That's a great point, Moke, because if he gets one in the next 2 years, that would be 6 for him. And a certain guy that wore a red Chicago jersey wearing number 23 that Kobe's compared to a lot has 6. And wouldn't surprise me if Kobe decided, you know what, I'd like 7.
And pushing his way towards the scoring title. If he had 6 in the scoring title, you can talk about the greatest of all time. And obviously, if he had 7 in the scoring title, he would be right there. Brian, as always, bringing the information. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Guys, my pleasure. I look forward to it. Enjoy.
Brian always does a great job with us, and it really is a great point. I mean, we can get into that conversation. You know, if Dwight Howard decides at some point this year he's going to play, at a level that Shaquille O'Neal doesn't think he can play at, and maybe take the Lakers, past the Thunder or out of the Western Conference and beat Miami. It'll be interesting to see that. What was also interesting, and we're going to have Will Leach in here next week, our good friend who's been on the show, did a great piece on Jeremy Lin, who really loves New York. That's a fact. I mean, he loves coming back for whatever reason. I think he came back here just for the shoot. But, certainly had a lot of interesting things to say. And Dalen, we were talking about it before, and you know Jeremy Lin very well. Not that Moke doesn't, but, just from your playing days. And, here's a guy who said something, and I don't have the quote in front of me, and I apologize for being unprepared with it. And I could look it up if I really wanted to, but it would take too much time.
Paraphrase, my man.
I will paraphrase it. He thinks that he believes in his mind, based on what he's dealt with, that he has to play at a very high level for a longer period of time because he's Asian. Give me your thoughts on that statement.
My thing with this is, once you're in the NBA, and the perception of him, or not perception, people's thought about him has been as a number of different factors. One, you went to Harvard and played in the Ivy League, so you're not a big-time BCS player. 2, you struggled in the D League and were cut by a couple teams. So, that's where people base their knowledge of him, their initial perception of him. Then they watch him play and see his game is not overly athletic. He's not an unbelievable shooter. He's not an unbelievable ball handler. Can't really go left. So there are deficiencies in his game. Yet he gets things done. He produces. He helps the team get better and help the team win. So the part about being Asian is what bothers me is once you hit the NBA, it doesn't matter anymore. Now, when he was 17 years old in a pickup game and being one of the lightest skinned guys on the planet that I am, I understand what it's like. People just assume you can't play.
Me too.
But you assume you can't play. You walk out there and you drop some buckets. Oh, this guy's pretty good. Now all of a sudden you're down and you're playing. Every time you go, you're the guy that's first picked or whatever. It's your team.
Right.
So Lin, I'm sure, went through the same thing. And he even said it when getting recruiting. Getting recruited to college, it was tougher because he's Asian and all that. I think there might be weight in some of that. But while you're in the NBA, now you don't need to perform because you're Asian at a higher level. You need to perform at a high level so much money wants you, and you have a job, and you can make money.
And you've never done it 82 times.
You haven't, and you haven't done it in the playoffs. So there's
and you've never done it in the playoffs.
There's a lot of questions left. So to make that comment after playing for 40 games or 35 games is a really, for a smart guy and a level-headed guy, it seemed like, that's just a really out-of-place comment for him.
I had a discussion last year, an argument last year about Iman Shumpert's defense, and people wanted to say that, he's this upper-level echelon elite defender. Well, he's not. He didn't do it in the playoffs yet. Mm-hmm. You can't anoint people ahead of time. They have to be proven. Lin has certainly had a great run. Linsanity was fantastic. My skepticism is not the contract. He should still be a Knick, but I need to see it 82 times. The Knicks are trying to play 100 games this year, and Lin is working off, 26? So my thing is, put that aside for a second. Carmelo Anthony and Jeremy Lin leaving, for some reason, has become synonymous. Jeremy Lin on the court certainly had some moments of being very selfish. He was a ball-dominant guard, made plays, got the place going crazy, made shots, obviously had his assist, and made some stupid turnovers. He's a flawed player. Why does Carmelo Anthony not have... explain to me the difference, and maybe there is and maybe there isn't, but explain to me the difference. Is there some racial undertone here between Carmelo Anthony fans and people who want Jeremy Lin still here?
I don't think so. I think it's just more. I think it's just the fact that Carmelo's going to have a bad rap in New York. I think the same way Alex Rodriguez has and probably will have a bad rap in New York. And I think it's mainly because of the way that Carmelo became a Knick. I think that from now until his tenure ends here, whenever that's going to be, people are always going to look back at that and they're always going to see Carmelo as being a selfish guy because at the end of the day, what he did was he put his pocketbook above the future fortunes of the team. So Carmelo is always going to be this selfish guy. Another thing that definitely did not help him was the gaffe in calling Jeremy Lin's contract ridiculous.
PR is not his strong suit.
Listen, never once in all my years, watching games as a fan and covering, as a member of the media, I've never heard a player say anything bad about somebody else's contract. Elton Brand, okay, in a way, I don't want to say he stabbed Baron Davis in the back, but he recruited Baron Davis to the Clippers, all right? And after Baron signed his deal, Elton Brand left and he went to Philly for a richer payday than what the Clippers were offering.
He was the number one pick.
And Baron Davis said, you know what, bro? Do your thing. Go get your money. And that's the NBA's fraternity.
And it's the same thing with Lin.
Hold on, real quick. Let me say this one thing, though. You already answered your question, though, as far as why does Melo get a bad rap. How he got here is part of it. What he said about Lin, people may not like, or what happened last year with the offense. He's never done in the playoffs either. So let's just start there. So that when you compare to the A-Rod, that's
a lot.
And in no other city more so than New York. And when the lights are the brightest, you have to perform at the highest level. And since Melo's been here, he has not done it. And to demand to be in a certain echelon of player and to never have any success at the playoffs, any success. He won one series or won 2 series?
One.
In 9 years, going on 10 now. I mean,
what if he didn't win one? Think about that.
Let's be like that. One or none. It's the same thing. It's not at a high level for the type of player that he thinks he is and people think he is. That's why.
Talking about
A-Rod, lights on. Uses kind of cowers.
And his career could have been so much different if he went to Boston.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're talking about probably steroids or no steroids, whatever. That's a whole nother argument.
That's another podcast. Right?
Forget about that. You're talking about on pace for being the greatest baseball player in the history of the game. I mean, that was A-Rod, especially at an infield position. Is Jeremy Lin's contract ridiculous?
Yes. I mean, it's flat. It is ridiculous, and I think it's.
So therefore, Carmelo's not wrong.
He's not wrong. But again, your ability to be a leader within the organization, a leader on the court, has to reflect on the court as well as off the court. You have to be able to say the right things and do the right things. Melo coming in. Melo has zero definition on his body up until maybe this year, he's lost about 15 pounds.
And he
can't be an elite
Photoshop help.
Have
gets
zero
Photoshop
muscle definition. That bothers me too. It's like that's part of his thing. Off the court, he does not do all the things, whether it's in the weight room or it's how you should command yourself as the leader of a program. So I think he doesn't think before he talks, and he's been put on anointed in a certain level without honestly getting to that level and earning it quite yet.
Well, there was a strong racial undertone between Knicks fans in the 70s. I think Patrick Ewing felt a lot of that as well. Patrick Ewing was also kind of bred under that system, from Mike Jarvis and having to deal with a lot of racism and crap in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He carried a chip on his shoulder, carried into the media, wasn't always embracing of the fans, and I always kind of felt that there was that clash there. It just seems to me that it's always been there between Knicks fans, and in this case, it seems like it's kind of dividing the house as opposed to just everybody being against one player.
Jeremy Lin started 25 games as a Knick. For me, I think all of the doubts about him and what he can actually do and whether or not the contract is quote unquote ridiculous or not, I think it's all because of the small body of work. I think that's really what it boils down to. Because if he averaged those numbers over the course of the 55 games or the 66 games of the regular season, I don't think we'd be having this conversation. Now, I do also think in a box that his contract and him making $8 million a year from the Rockets, I do think that that's ridiculous. But his entire situation is ridiculous.
Always.
When a general manager pays Rudy Gay max money, or when Andre Iguodala, or even Rajon Rondo at the time, when these guys are given $60 million, $70 million, Danny Ainge is rolling the dice and saying, I think that you're going to be good enough to warrant this. But the difference with a guy like Rondo is you usually have 3 or 4 years of work before you have to make that decision on how much you're going to pay him.
Your rookie scale.
Lin had 25 games, and we've never seen an early bird free agent outplay the minimum salary by so much. And that's the reason why this whole thing, it's a great thing to look at because it's never happened before.
And part of it is, I think it's funny that he says it's the two things. He says him being Asian to perform at a higher level. Part of the reason you got that deal is because you're Asian. Let's be honest. That's part of his marketability. They're selling millions of jerseys in the Far East part of this world, and they're going to keep doing that. Now they're going to be Rockets, not Knicks jerseys. And now it's a whole nother jersey people are going to buy. And that aspect is part of his fame. So if you think it's part of the detractor, it's part of your upside as well, and part of the reason you're so marketable. The other thing I want to say is about...
He's a smart kid.
He's a smart kid. The other thing you were saying was about Just basketball in general has always had a racial issue because it was a black-dominated sport for the last 50 years. And in a white-dominated world, that was a bit of an issue. So that still will always have its undertones in this sport more than any other sport.
Which the NBA capitalized on with Magic and Bird on television. You know, it was East and West, and definitely get all that. My thing is just this issue specifically amongst Knicks fans and how it seems to be a hot topic and something that's really angered a lot of people and divided. At least that's divided them. At least that's what I've seen.
I think so too. I think part of it was some people argue that this guy, to your point, the body of work's only 25 games. What if he does? I just said in rapid fire, I think he's going to get better, but I don't know, leaps and bounds better. What if he does? What if he's an all-star point guard in 3 years?
Which is possible.
You're kicking yourself. So that if I when I step back and look, and that was part of my reason last week being like, I'm not sure what they're doing. I would have kept Lynn purely for the fact that it's a commodity, not just marketability, but you got a player that could be really good and could run your team. And you let him go for a guy for Felton who ran your team once and was good at it with that crew of guys. Is he going to be good at it with these guys? And the way he's played the last couple of years, I'm not that confident. Obviously, from all my answers in rapid fire, I almost took everybody but Felton. So I'm not that confident in the point guard situation. I would have kept him purely for that. I think people are divided based on where we were going to go. Why would you let this guy go and bring on these other guys and have all these deals? A lot of the deals they've made over the last 6 years confuse me.
When you could have just spent money and kept him, and then you could have always traded him and got something for him. As we move forward, certainly something we're going to have to monitor and keep an eye on because everybody's interested to see what Jeremy Lin does in Houston. They're a young, exciting team that he's got full reins. Certainly he's going to have an advantage with a global vote to try to make an all-star team. I would bet that he most certainly will at some point.
Mid-December is when the Rockets are in the Garden. I think it might be the 12th or the 15th or something.
And it'll be the center of the basketball universe. Unfortunately for the Nets, on that night anyway, I mean, certainly the Nets are really gaining a lot of momentum in Brooklyn. And to give us the latest on what's happening over there is Moke Hamilton. What do you got?
Woo! Last night, man. Ooh,
yeah, I heard they played last night, but they sort of played last night.
Yeah, they quote unquote played.
They were out there,
and they quote unquote tried to compete against the Boston Celtics. Last night was definitely not a good game for the Nets. In Coach Avery Johnson's post-game press conference, he came out and he was very humble. And you can check out snynets.com. We got a lot of quotes up there from the post-game, but he was humbled. And he said, look, honestly, what happened tonight was we came in here and we said that we were going to treat this like a preseason game, and we played it like a preseason game. Johnson also gave C.J. Watson the night off, and anyone who's watched the Nets over the previous 3 preseason games knows how well and how important C.J. Watson was to that team. So the fact that Watson was not out there to kind of give them that jolt of energy off of the bench, they were kind of dead in the water, from the game began. And now we have the pre-game primer. That's something that we're doing on snynets.com, where before every game, we're going to just tell you what's going on. We're going to tell you who's injured, who's playing, who's not playing, what to look for in this game. Last night's pre-game primer, I wrote that. And what I said was to look out for the revenge factor, because the Celtics are a proud team. And the Nets' second unit stole that game from them Tuesday night in the Celtics' home. All right? The Celtics, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Doc Rivers, Rondo, they don't want the Nets to get used to beating them. They don't.
They
want
did
that.
it with the Knicks all the time.
Even though it's preseason, they do not want that. Last night, Paul Pierce came out and he hit his first 3 shots, and the Nets turned the ball over maybe 4 of their first 5 possessions, and you just knew that the Celtics came to play last night. And the Nets ran into a buzzsaw. They weren't ready for it.
Paul Pierce is a guy, man. You want to talk about guys playing themselves into shape. Yeah, that guy can flip it on like a switch.
I think he played 26 minutes last night.
Yeah.
Something like that. And Garnett played like 24. I mean, that right there tells you the story for those guys to play in a preseason game that many minutes.
And they got to set the tone for the young kids.
115-85 was the final, and the Nets didn't have a shot. The Nets did not lead at all last night.
Here's my thing. The X factor to me with the Nets is Teletovic. If he gives you some of that Novak quality, then the Nets are going to be a handful. I mean, they still can't protect the rim. And I need Brook Lopez, not that Brook Lopez cares about what anybody in the media really thinks, but we need to see more of defending the rim before we can anoint these guys a team that can get out of the first round. He's played well, but the guy who really is going to make that thing go, if they can add the element of the 3-point shot, is Teletovic. What are your thoughts on him right away?
Well, right away, I think that he definitely has a good stroke, and he has NBA range. But, thus far, he's not really shot well over the course of the preseason. And that's something that you kind of just expect to develop over time. What I will say is I think that Joe Johnson and Darren Williams, I think that everything starts and stops with them. And I think as the two best players, they've showed great chemistry. They definitely do not look like guys that have only played together 3 games or, 3 weeks or however long it's been. They look like they can play together. And one thing that Avery Johnson has been experimenting with is having C.J. Watson play the point guard, having Williams as the 2, and having Joe Johnson as the 3. Mm-hmm. And one thing about Johnson, depending on who the matchup is on the opposing end, he's actually a very, very good post player.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get some action where you have
one of the game's best.
If you have him setting screens for Williams and you have Williams curling off and getting a pass from Watson, catch and shoot, they can play like that. And they can also feature Johnson down there in the post. So, I think I'm a bit higher on the Nets than a lot of people. And I think part of the reason why is because I've seen them so much, and I think that these guys are capable of playing well. Andre Blatch, he's had a great preseason, and obviously he's trying to prove himself and get his career back on track. But, if he can give them 15 to 20 good minutes a night, and if he can just do what he's done in the preseason, I think that the Nets can be a pretty good team in the conference, and that's why I said I see them as the 3rd team in the division.
I actually like that lineup a lot, and I talked about this last year when the Knicks played the Nets a couple times. They kept putting Williams at the 2 and running him off singles and double screens. And as soon as you get that guy any space, he's knocked down jump shots, he hits closeout situations. It makes his role a little different, but his life a little easier, so he's not responsible for the ball all the time. And when you put Johnson on that wing too, that's a pretty deadly combination, whether Williams is the 2 or the 1. I think it's going to be fun to watch. All that said, it'll be fun to watch because they got to score to win. You already said it. They can't guard teams enough to really hold anybody down. So
in the division,
yeah, they'll be fun to watch because they got to play up. They have to score the basketball to win, and they're going to push tempo, and they got guards that can do it, and they got Lopez, one of the better scoring centers in the game. So it'll be fun to watch.
And absolutely, they need another center on that roster. You're 100% correct. I don't think I've actually ever said that I totally agree with you that they need better rim protection. And they need another big in there that is a threat to block shots. I say another big. I don't even know if Brook Lopez, I don't know if guys fear taking it to the rack against him, but they need shot blocking. They definitely do.
Let me answer that for you. Nobody fears taking it to Brook Lopez. I would take it to Brook Lopez.
Well, we talked about Jeremy Lin coming back and having, and certainly November 2nd with the Heat coming to the Garden, all NBA eyes will be on New York, but not even close to what it will be like on November 1st as we inch closer to opening the arena for real. And thanks, Moke, for giving us the Nets update, and we look forward to that. Basketball in New York is going to be off the charts. As we head into our last minute or so here, Dalen, give me your final thoughts on what you'd like to expect tonight. I know you're going to be sitting, we'll probably be hanging together, but sitting in front of the television watching Knicks Raptors, what would you like to see early on in that first quarter?
I think early on, I think it is a matter of just how they're going to play together. When I say they, it's Amari and Carmelo. It's still, in my mind, the jury's still out on how they operate together successfully. Last year it was, it wasn't a great sample size. There wasn't a ton of games, and particularly once Woodson was in control, there wasn't a ton of games. And there honestly wasn't a ton of success, minus that streak where Melo went out of his mind. If Melo plays at a more normal, not shooting 52% or whatever he was for like a month, how are these guys going to play together? And to your point we talked about earlier, can Amari get some post touches and can he score? What are his decisions? I want to see what are his, as I said before, what's his go-to and his counter? If he's hanging on the ball for a long time, not indecisive, it's not going to work that way. I want to see him catch and make some moves, and if they can work like that.
Moke?
Well, we need to get a UPenn guy in here because Dalen and I, we have this Columbia connection, and we agree on everything, it seems like. For me, it's all about Stoudemire.
The Princeton guy would really help us disagree, I'll tell you that much. Penn, maybe not so much. Princeton, definitely.
I took some journalism courses in Columbia School of Journalism, so I'm a phony, but at least give me a little.
Well, you got the Columbia blue shirt on right there, so we'll make you an honorary member.
Thank you.
I don't really have anything to add to that. I think it's all about Stoudemire, especially coming off of such a poor season last season. He's a little lighter this season, and now he supposedly has his back to the basket game. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. And what I also will say about that is, the Raptors, he should be able to, of all teams, he's not playing against the Celtics bigs, and he's not playing against the Lakers. The Raptors, a division opponent that probably has the weakest sect of big men in the division, he should be able to have his way with them. So if this postgame is for real, we'll probably see it tonight.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. Guys, 2 for 2, tremendous podcast. Look forward to next week. Really enjoying this stuff. We dug real deep, talked about some stuff that not a lot of people are talking about, and I appreciate that, and appreciate you guys taking the time coming in. Have a great weekend, and as we move forward, you can always find Moke Hamilton on snynets.com. Does a great job. Dalen Cuff, MSG Varsity, at dcuff21.
Dalen Cuff 21.
At Dalen Cuff 21 on Twitter. Please follow him. And, of course, at Moke Hamilton. Follow him on Twitter, as well as at Tommy D. TKB. Also, TKB Radio, Anthony Riceballs does it again last night, having Anthony Mason on. Knicks great. Was a great show, so make sure you check that out after you're done checking this one out. Or if you're checking this one out, maybe you've already checked that one out. But either way, Anthony does a great job. For everybody here at SNY, thank you very much. Enjoy the weekend, and let's go Knicks.